Okay, so some people were asking me about how I went about setting up my character for that Wish video, the girl saying there. I was gonna do a tutorial. I'm still kind of in the process of doing a tutorial, but it's getting kind of lengthy. I think right now I have, yeah, here's what I have so far. And it's about 6 hours long. So it's pretty in-depth. I could probably edit it down a bit, but it would still be fairly lengthy. I'd probably break it up into different parts. But yeah, it just pretty much shows the going through all the different steps. So from WoW model viewer all the way to a finished product like this, and that'd be using the Night Elf female model. And I'm still working on it because I'm not done the tutorial yet, but this is essentially what you know, what the end result would be, more or less. Still gotta do the face targets and stuff like that. But I figured I'd just give a quick rundown of how I set up this character and actually animated her and everything. So I'm just gonna go into perspective mode here. I'm just gonna hide everything except for geometry. So the character itself is just a regular WoW model. I didn't do anything special to it. Obviously it does have like you know, animation on it. There's no bone animation, it's just the facial animation. And if we take a look at the bones here, we can see it's you know, pretty simple setup. Just unhide everything except geometry. You have your standard cat rig. Everything is just set to display as a box. Feet, platforms, hands. I have twists in the forearm and the upper arm. You know, breastbones just for a bit of extra secondary movement. The face is a bit more complex. It has a lot more going on. So essentially what I have is this right here. This is responsible for the eyelids. And pretty much how that works is that I have a master eyelid controller and then a, let's say, a slave eyelid controller. And I use, you know, 2 sets of these, so, you know, 4 bones, 4 helpers to control that. And pretty much how that works is that in my little interface here, whenever I want to close the lower eye, or shut the upper eye rather, that helper is actually animated. And the reason I have a helper and a bone is so that if I want the character to blink, I can use the helpers, but since I also have a controller for where the eye movement is, I can have those secondary bones, you know, animated with the eyes, so that you do get some, you know, eye movement, eyelid movements. Just like that. Everything here is mostly morph targets, except for a couple of things. You'll see that the eyebrows themselves are, you know, just a couple of, you know, 4 different helpers to control the shape of the eyebrow. I also have a morph target controller for the eyebrows, just to kind of help with defining expressions. The eyes are a pretty simple setup as well. So the way that works is that each one of these eyes is using a look at constraint to look at one of these helpers, so left and right eye, these 2 boxes here, and that's controlled through a master look at controller, which is controlled in this box here. And then I also have this box as well, which is lock world, and I just have a slider here that I can slide, and then the eyes will be locked into this world position. So if I want you know, the character to stare at a certain object, or, you know, something like that, I can do that without having to you know, counter animate every time she moves her body or her face. A couple of other things that are bones, something like the jaw. The jaw itself is a bone. I just find it easier to animate like that. And this is all set up through the reaction manager. So pretty much how that works is through the reaction manager, you just go to animation, reaction manager, and set everything up inside of there. And I'll give you a simple one, for example, the jaw. So this button right here is the master, and it's controlling the jaw bone itself, its rotational space. So that's controlling its XYZ rotation through this controller here, and that's just set up using different states. And I use the exact same method for all of these. The eyes, you know, were a little bit more complicated because I do have to animate the X and Y position of this master look at target, and I also have to animate the rotation, up and down rotation of both eyelids for each eye, and that's all controlled with this one button. So to do facial animation, you don't necessarily need to have a setup like this, but it makes everything phenomenally easier and really ramps up how quickly you can do your animations. As for the eye locking, essentially how I did that is fairly simple. If I were to go into my motion panel here, and I went into my where is it? Or sorry, not for the eyes themselves. The look at master. Under positional constraints, I have just its normal position XYZ, which is controlled with this dial and reaction manager. And I also have another position controller, which is a positional constraint that's bound to this lock world. And whenever I slide over this controller, essentially what that's doing is just changing the weight of that layer. One issue that I've found with this though is that if I were to lock it to the world, you can see that my eyelids no longer follow the eyes themselves, but still do respond to the controller here. So I'm trying to look into ways of fixing that. It's not too noticeable, and I can, you know, go in and just animate up and down a little bit just so that it kind of gives that, you know, motion, but it's something that I'd like to fix. As for morph targets themselves, the only I'll go through the morph targets I have. So like I said, I have the brows, so you know, sad, angry. I have the bones, well technically helpers, but they're considered bones, just controlling the eyebrows themselves. And all this was I just used the reaction manager to control the X, Y, and Z position of these helpers here, and just kind of, you know, moved them up and out whenever the eyebrow moves upwards, and then kind of down and closer together whenever it moves down. The eyelids, like I said, are controlled through bones, so just a simple bone controlling the eyelids just in the back of the eyeball, just rotating up and down. I already went over the eyes. Other morph targets I have are things like puff and suck, so it just kind of pushes out the cheeks, sucks them in, useful if you're talking. Cheekbones up and down, part and press. Essentially what that does is just show the teeth more and then just thin the lips. I have the jaw controller. I have individual left and right mouth controls for smile, frown, you know, pucker, pull the lips apart. I don't really use them that much. I have a smile and a frown. And I also have this one here, sync, which just kind of moves the mouth around. And that's actually come in pretty useful because we're trying to achieve a certain look for your animation. Like she's pronouncing a certain word and you notice, well, the bottom teeth are showing too much. You can just easily come in here and just move this up so that, you know, it's kind of even. So for example, this here, I have it moved a bit up. I think by default it was something like down here, and you can see it's showing a bit too much of the lower teeth, so I just moved it up a little bit there. Super useful, very easy to do. other controllers I have, or morph targets rather, is just a simple pucker. You know, for your W's, O sounds, stuff like that. And then just one that controls the F noise, because F is sort of hard to recreate with any combination of morph targets, because your bottom lip actually kind of curls behind your top teeth here. So that's pretty much how I did the animation. It seems complicated, but you know, everything is broken down into you know, bite-sized chunks, and you're not going to be able to hear any audio, but if I just you know, hold forward here, you can see them both, you know, firing off at the same time. I'll just hide. I'll keep everything unhidden. So this kind of gives you an idea of how the animation is really achieved. I'm just simply animating those buttons over there. Everything is set up through Reaction Manager. In my tutorial I fully go over how to do this, but it is sort of lengthy, so I'm still working on it. I'm trying to, you know, bring the time of it down. But anyway, just thought I'd make this quick video in the meantime. Anyway, take care.